So we're just going to send Amanda live. Okay, and we're live.
Lovely. Thanks ever so much, Andrew. Good evening, everybody who's joined us today. So that's our members of the CSP and some visitors who will be talking tonight, and also some members of the public who are dialing in. I'm Amanda Gregory. I am the chair of the Community Safety Partnership. I'm also employed by the Isle of Wight Council, and I am the strategic manager in regulatory and community safety services. So just a short housekeeping for this evening. As I said, we have got a number of statutory partners on the call this evening, and I'll explain who they are in a minute. We also have some individuals who'll be presenting for us this evening. And as they start to talk, you will see them on screen. So hopefully that will work really well. Our presenters and statutory partners will be on mute. And please could you stay on mute unless you have a question to ask. That would be really good. For members of the public, you're not able to unmute yourself and we won't be able to see you. However, if you go to the top of your screen, there is a speech bubble with a question mark in it. And that is a question and answer ability that you have. So if you do have a question for either one of the partners who is here this evening or someone who is presenting, or just another question that you would like to ask the Community Safety Partnership, then please do put that in that question and answer bubble, and we will come to you and hopefully answer that question. It may be we might not be able to answer that question this evening, but we will make every attempt to do that, and if we can't, then we'll be able to get a response to you after the meeting. So after the meeting, this will also be uploaded to the Isle of Wight YouTube channel. So you can always go back and watch it. And if you don't get the opportunity to ask a question during our presentations this evening and using that chat button, you can always email it to us afterwards, and we can put that up hopefully in the chat bar as well, which is community.safety@iow.gov.uk. Andrew Wheeler, who is managing the Teams live event this evening, will be able to either answer that query or put it to one of the partners who can do that for us. So I've just introduced myself. I'm not going to do formal introductions of the rest of the Community Safety Partnership members on the line this evening, but I will just run through in general who we have here. So just to explain a little bit about a Community Safety Partnership. It's a statutory partnership that we have to have in place, and that partnership includes a number of partners, and our key things are to reduce crime, disorder, reoffending, antisocial behaviour, and a few other statutory functions like prevent, which is around stopping people from becoming radicalised and committing terrorism activities. So it's a statutory partnership. We also have a number of partners of that statutory partnership. I've already mentioned that I'm from the Isle of Wight Council. The Isle of Wight Council is one of those key partners there. Also from the Isle of Wight Council, we will have the cabinet member who covers community safety, and that is Ian Stevens, who is the current cabinet member for us. We also have the clinical commissioning group, the police. We have Sarah Jackson, the district commander, here this evening, the fire rescue service and the probation service. We also have a number of other members who may come along from time to time or be specifically invited, and they will include bodies like some of the housing associations, maybe children's services, our inclusion service, which we do have speaking today, and our youth offending service. So a number of key partners who will be brought in from time to time. Now, the focus of the CSP is really to understand where we can plug the gaps or add value to other services which are provided. We're not here to duplicate what some of the other services are doing, but we are here to look at those key things which perhaps are missing, or we could add some value to it to improve the lives and well-being and the situation on the Isle of Wight. So as part of our CSP, we do have a strategic assessment, which we do every year. So we look at a lot of data around crime and disorder and other related issues. And then we look at that data which is given to us, and we can then come up with a partnership plan, including a number of priorities. So with regard to the agenda this evening, the first person who's going to present to us is Andrew Wheeler, who is my Community Safety Manager, and he's going to cover those community safety activities and priorities for me. Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks, thanks, Amanda. I'm just going to bring up some presentation slides to guide me through this. Okay. Lovely. Okie doke. Brilliant. There we go. We can now see that. Okay. Excellent. Okay, thank you ever so much, Amanda, for the introduction. Yes, I'm going to provide just an oversight of our sort of activities during the last year, the community safety partnership priorities, and some thoughts around plans and activities for the coming year. This is going to lead into the following two presentations on the agenda, which will sort of highlight some of our priorities with those sort of wider partners in more detail, just to showcase some of the work we're doing. We'll, as Amanda mentioned, if we could ask, sort of go to Q&A questions, if people have any questions from the public in between presentations, we'll go to review them then. I've got my slides up on both screens, so I can't see them here at the minute, but I'll be managing the questions coming in. So I'll check them after my presentation. We've got some web pages as well and contact emails I'll bring up at the end that Amanda mentioned. So the CSPs are a statutory function following the Crime and Disorder Act 1998. So local authorities and police and other agencies have a duty to set up a community safety partnership and develop joint strategies to tackle crime and ASB. We do prepare an annual strategic and needs assessment, which is used to aid our planning of activities to get a better understanding of trends and demographics on the island. But as Amanda mentioned, it is much more than this. Crime is just an antisocial behaviour is the output, and we all have a duty to address issues before they sort of reach that point. So I'm going to run through our priorities. They are in no particular order, but I'm going to go clockwise round the wheel. Start with domestic violence and abuse and serious sexual offences. So we do host a specific domestic abuse forum, which is a working group looking at this theme. And they help coordinate a joined up effort from all agencies in relation to this priority. Which is really, it's just so important given the complexities of the issue and how it can impact anyone, any age, any gender. So I'm pleased to share that we've got colleagues here today to highlight this priority. There's been a number of achievements over the last year, which has really been quite a difficult time for everyone given the pandemic. So we've really emphasised our campaigns work to ensure that those who may need it are being reached in relation to the support that's available, and that we're also starting to challenge culture and behaviour through these campaigns as well. I don't want to steal Teresa's thunder, but the self-referrals we've received as a direct result of campaigns has been a real recent success. So on to our Teresa, Tracy and Tracy will be going into that theme in a bit more detail shortly. So just going on to reoffending, again, this is a statutory priority. working alongside our probation service and youth offending team, who all feed into the community safety partnership. We actually heard from one of our partners last year from the youth offending team, and this year we're looking to refresh our strategy following the recent merge back to the probation service of the community rehabilitation company. I know our colleagues from our youth offending team have worked sort of really flexibly over the last year to meet the needs of young people, and an achievement was they secured some additional funding sort of last year to increase resources working with families where sort of adolescent to parent violence was a presenting concern. On to road safety. Again, we have a specific working group looking at priority locations and issues, which is driven by data and also community concerns. We actually heard from the chair last year. We had a more detailed presentation last year. This arrangement has changed slightly given the move of the fire service into the joint Hampshire and Isle of Wight fire service. So we've moved the road safety theme to our highways team, and we'll be looking at this arrangement sort of in more detail later on in the year under that new auspices. We had some really successful sort of police operations over the last year and during lockdown periods where road misuse was a particular concern for members of our community, and police colleagues locally arranged for specific interventions and additional resource through the roads policing unit to provide sort of intervention and also reassurance during those times. And just moving around to prevent. So what I mean by prevent is it's part of the government's contest strategy, which aims to safeguard vulnerable people from being radicalised into supporting terrorism. So it's the sort of counter-terrorism strategy, if you will. This is a statutory function for actually for the local authority, but with community safety partners all feeding into the process. So part of this work is focused on identifying and supporting those who might be vulnerable to being radicalised or drawn into terrorist activity, as well as providing sort of education to professionals on this topic. We hold an annual Prevent Board meeting and share the sort of counter-terrorism local profile to colleagues when available. And from this, a certain amount of work can take place around awareness raising and education. So it's predominantly a sort of safeguarding exercise, if you will, so that partners know where to refer should they come into contact with anyone displaying these sort of safeguarding risks. And just going on to antisocial behaviour and community cohesion. So again, a priority area for the community safety partnership, and for very much so for Ireland residents as well. So we have an action group specifically looking at this area of work and drawing in multiple partners to problem solve issue locations, individuals, trends, utilising sort of a variety of powers whilst managing, I guess, that careful balance around support and enforcement. We've actually included sort of community cohesion within this work area. And sort of with the aim of partners working together on cases that have a risk of escalating and could result in, say, a hate crime, for example. So we use tools such as mediation to explore sort of tolerances and help different parties sort of come to an understanding around issues. And we also undertake street mapping exercises to gain community perception and understanding of issues. So that'll predominantly be sort of door knocking activities with a few key partners in a locality, perhaps where we've had antisocial behaviour concerns, and we just want to get a feel from the local community if there's any specific issues. We have seen a reduction in reported ASB sort of year on year over the last couple of years, so it'll be interesting to look at the data later this year in relation to antisocial behaviour. And just going to come on to reducing violent crime. On to my next slide, yeah. So I suppose as part of the national effort to reduce serious violence, the Isle of Wight has also included this theme within its priorities, and we've secured external funding from the Home Office specifically to look at this. So the aim of our priority around violent crime is we use what's called a violence reduction unit. Really, it's another name for a partnership who aim to take a public health approach to violence. So seeing it as an issue to prevent earlier rather than at crisis point, by addressing some of the key drivers that lead to this crime type. So we're part of the Pan Hampshire Violence Reduction Unit, which gets funding through to the Police and Crime Commissioner's Office, and then devolved down to the Isle of Wight, Portsmouth, Southampton and Hampshire. And we're one of 18 areas across the country that have been appointed VRU funding following the government's serious violence strategy. So just to explain perhaps a bit more about that kind of public health approach. So we're really, as agencies, looking to increase protective factors for young people. So under 25s is the target sort of audience for this work. And those protective factors could be, having a trusted adult role in a young person's life, or being involved in full-time education or employment, or having positive activities, or addressing mental health concerns, for example, and also reducing risk factors. So all of this is actually, sort of evidence-based as well, using best practice both nationally and internationally. So for the Isle of Wight, we've funded interventions working directly with young people. So over the last year, we worked with approximately 143 young people through 5 different interventions. And one of those was actually through securing some additional funding throughout COVID, some sort of COVID contingency funding to support groups who may have been sort of struggling to deliver in normal ways because of COVID restrictions and the knock-on effects of that. So I'm just going to touch on just a few examples of some of the work that we've done with young people, just because I feel it helps bring the work to life. So one of our interventions, which focuses on specifically addressing sort of mental health concerns, they worked with one young person experiencing really quite complex family issues, which was having quite a substantial negative impact on that individual's mental and physical health. But through intensive one-to-one work, then they've been able to make sense of those complex issues, which has led to a greater sense of sort of worth and self-awareness, and they've been able to develop coping strategies and now have sort of future aspirations and goals which wouldn't have been there without that intensive one-to-one work. So a really positive outcome for that young person. We have another intervention based over in Ryde. It's an allotment project run by the youth service over there, and we actually had Donna Jones, the new Police and Crime Commissioner, visit the allotment session to actually see directly how the funding, which is devolved from her office, is benefiting young people. Some of those young people who attend are known to be sort of at risk of exclusion. So having an alternative provision means that they've sort of really benefited from that alternative provision, which has had a knock-on effect on their education attainment. They now do sort of 3 sessions a week, for lots of different young people, with various activities from sort of planting, a bit of landscaping, building planters, the great fun had down there by the young people, and it's really helped sort of give people a real sense of self-worth, aspiration and achievement as well. And just a third example, so this was our intervention that we funded through lockdown. SWAY, South Wight Area Youth, some of you may know of the organisation. So I've just got a bit of an anonymous quote here from a a parent, just to say that the Sway team were invaluable for their young person since they first began, being involved in their work. And they mentioned it was especially so during the last year with so many lockdowns, the lack of other social interaction. They've really helped their child feel connected to others, support their mental health and physical health and self-esteem through some of the group work and activities, which is again really positive. So going back to sort of those protective factors, that's a really good example of an island provision, providing that sort of trusted adult role within that supportive environment for young people. So that's the different priorities. Oh gosh, sorry, I've just cycled back through my slides. I'm just going to briefly mention COVID. I know we're probably all sick of talking about this now, but I mentioned it at our last live meeting, and unfortunately it's still relevant to mention it a second time as we had our third, I think it was the third lockdown earlier in the year, and obviously restrictions really have only sort of fully relaxed. But as a CSP, we have aimed to mitigate some of the risks brought about due to the pandemic, and also take advantage of opportunities to benefit the island. So I mentioned the domestic violence and abuse theme earlier. So we've done a number of campaigns around this, given the lockdowns, and again, my colleagues I'm sure will mention that shortly. I mentioned also the youth offending team, the additional resourcing they secured, which again was due to sort of COVID concerns. And we've also been able to kind of address and highlight other safeguarding concerns. We did an exploitation workshop for frontline professionals and foster carers around certain risks there. And we also did some sort of briefing and awareness to schools around that sort of radicalisation theme, given the amount of online time people had over lockdowns and things. The local authority again earlier this year continued its sort of regulatory work in partnership with the police as well, and did a lot of corporate comms around how we're sort of engaging. It was a very difficult time to keep up with legislation and guidance, so we did our best to fight our way through the woods to relay the right messages. Also doing things like highlighting specific COVID related scams that unfortunately people were taking advantage of. We also did sort of some online briefings for local businesses as well, hospitality sector, the event sector as well, to help them understand what they need to be doing in relation to being COVID compliant and those sorts of things. And we've just been spending a bit of time looking at the nighttime economy, the reopening. You'll see some good police comms coming out over the last sort of weeks and coming weeks around sort of lockdown easing and safety with regards to that as well. And it will be really quite interesting and important to look at the data for this period to see how different it has been, and we will take sort of learning from that. And I know a lot of organisations have taken learning over this last period to ensure that they're still delivering a mixture of face-to-face and virtual interventions, which has kind of widened the reach, I guess, to our residents on the island. And so that sort of rolls nicely into sort of future plans. So we have some sort of current themes we're working on as a CSP. So just submitted a Safer Streets funding opportunity bid through the Home Office. And again, that's done through the Police and Crime Commissioner's Office. And that bid is to look at and address the violence against women and girls theme, and really sort of start to unpick some of the cultural behavioural issues around that. So we're doing some work about that, and we'll find out about that bid later on in August. We've also got some other future opportunities for external funding, again for possible positive interventions in relation to the nighttime economy. So again, something we'll look at there. We're continuing our VRU funded interventions, as I mentioned earlier, and we've just done a small grants round for other organisations. So we're just administering that at the minute, hopefully allocating some more funding, that Home Office external funding that we secure out to frontline community grassroots organisations working directly with young people. So hopefully this time next year I'll be able to report on some more positive outcomes that's helped achieved. Also through the VRU, we've got some training opportunities for frontline staff around being trauma informed, and some education interventions specifically for school years 6 and 7s, those transition years, sort of around exploitation, gang culture and those types of things. So there's lots going on at the minute that we're just trying to grasp and ensure that the Isle of Wight benefits to some extent from these initiatives. Have some changes to put in place around the new Domestic Abuse Act, which is became an act this year and has put some new duties on local authorities. So we're doing work around that. And we'll also be looking at our strategic assessment for crime and antisocial behaviour again later this year, ready to be published hopefully by the end of the year, which will go up on our website as well. So just sort of in summary, I've got the Isle of Wight community safety webpage there. So we've got different links in relation to some of the things that I've mentioned today. We've got a specific domestic abuse page which has all of the island support providers on, details about recent campaigns and those sorts of things on there as well. And we've got a mailbox, an email box there. So if you do have any questions or any thoughts about some of the things I've quickly rattled through, then do let me know. And we can help answer those. Okay, that comes to the end of my presentation. I'm just going to go now to just to the Q&A bar, just to see if we've had any questions in, or if anybody wants to mention any questions now. Just stop sharing that. I can bring up those details as well later on in the meeting.
Thank you, Andrew. I can't see questions in there at the moment, so unless any of the partners on the call today have any queries.
No, okay.
Well,
we've got the Q&A session, haven't we, later on in the agenda? So so please send your questions through, and we can answer them then.
Yeah, no problem. Right, so I think we've got Gary on the call, haven't we? I think I've just seen his name pop up. Andrew might just need to unmute him. So if we go to Gary Hutchins, who is going to do us a presentation on the inclusion update.
Oh, hello, this is Jo here. Gary, is it possible to put your video picture up so we're able to share you? Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, Gary. Thanks for dialing in.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. Thanks, Gary.
Brilliant. Sorry, I know it appears that I'm doing my presentation from a car. I am. Apologies for that. So I'm getting all kinds of messages up that I'm muted, unmuted, but you can hear me okay and see me and everything.
Yep, can definitely see you, can definitely hear you. So yeah, please do give us an update on the drug and alcohol support service. Okay,
so it's been a bit of a whirlwind year, of course, for everybody, especially in a service like ours. So just give you a bit of background, I work for Inclusion, which is part of the Midlands Partnership Foundation Trust. It might seem a bit strange that Midlands Partnership Foundation Trust have got a sort of running services on the island. The way our services work is that contracts go out to tender in various places in the country. People bid for them, and we were actually asked to come and take over the service on the Isle of Wight based on because we've had the contract in Hampshire for some years now. So Inclusion, just to give you a bit of a whistle stop tour, have been around since 2002, and we're an NHS organisation in the substance misuse field. A lot of the time, so sometimes it's run by a voluntary organisation, but we're sort of half NHS, half voluntary organisation, so we're quite flexible in some ways with that. We've been on the island since December 2018, and there's been quite a lot of changes since we took over the contract. I think there was some issues with the alcohol service at the time, and some problems there. So that's one of the reasons we were asked to come in. But since we've come and we've restructured the service quite considerably. The contract that we've got is for 3 years. And what we've got in that contract is the community substance misuse service for adults, young people, and family and carers. And I'll go into a little bit more about those as we go. I haven't done a PowerPoint for today because I like to try and keep things simple and a bit more interactive and just to mix things up a little bit, if that's okay with everybody. If I don't cover everything that you would like to know about, you can see more about our service on www.inclusioniow.org, or give us a ring on 01983 526 654. We always love talking about the service. Even if you would like me to come along and do a presentation somewhere else or somewhere in the local community, we've done plenty of those. I think in the last 2 years I've done about 70 presentations to various people, to 3 people, to 300 people, just to talk about how to access the service, what we do. We've got a multidisciplinary team, so we have a doctor, we have nurses, we have recovery workers, we have 40 volunteers, we've got engagement workers, we have a social worker. So it's a really experienced team that we've got, because obviously in the substance misuse field, we some of the people that access our service have got very complex needs. We offer prescribing from our service, so substitute opiate prescribing. For example, we've got 220 service users on the island that are currently accessing substitute opiate prescribing. So that would be people that are opiate users, use illicit drugs in the community and are looking to get into treatment and help, which has knock-on effect to doing things like reducing drug-related crime, and just improving health generally, and giving people a bit of a foothold in their lifestyle, to be able to move on. We offer possibilities in terms of education, employment, for people that have reached used our services to reach a stage of recovery. We also have we can do community alcohol detoxes. We also have the budget for inpatient rehab placements, yeah, so for every element of the service, basically some community that smokes cannabis twice a week but considers that to be an issue that's having an effect on their life, we work with those people. We also work with chaotic IV drug users with significant support needs as well, at the other end of the spectrum, and each person that comes through the door in our service has their own care plan and their own way through. And what basically our role is to give people all the options that are available to them in Isle of Wight services for people to plot their own way through, and we give them as many options as we possibly can. And we've worked really hard over the last couple of years also to increase accessibility for people in the Isle of Wight, because I think when we took over there were about 450 people using the service on the island, for all the substances that I've just mentioned and all the reasons, but now it's more like 650 people. We've changed the structure so people can come into full treatment, structured treatment, do as much as they want during the week, get a high level of support, but also people that just want to come in or maybe reset, have been in recovery before, having a little bit of a wobble in the recovery and just want to get involved in some sort of brief interventions to sort of set them back again. So just to give you a bit of an impression in terms of the levels of referrals, especially during COVID, we usually, I think June 2019, we had about 35 referrals in the Isle of Wight. June just gone, we had 116 referrals. And that's been consistent now for about the last 8 months. Many of those people are sort of non-dependent drinkers, people that are not physically dependent on alcohol, that are looking for some help and support. I think some of the patterns we've seen during COVID, people are drinking more. I think that's recognised nationally now. But also we've done a lot of publicity about the service, the fact that the service is back open, and we've expanded and showed, you know, what's on offer to the community and to other professionals as well. We've done a lot of training across the island as well. We in our young people service, we do a lot of work in schools and the community, a lot of outreach work with people that maybe are a bit ambivalent about accessing our services as well, sending people out just to talk about it. I mentioned before about our volunteer program as well, and like I said, we've got about 40 people that are a couple more than 40 people that are accessing that at the moment, and the big education program around there are lots of support. People can come in, maybe offer an hour a week or something like that if they just want to sort of offer something on our timetable, like cookery classes or badminton or a walking group or something like that, all the way through to the third stage, whereby people can carry a small caseload, because in the substance misuse field, people that have got lived experience, the evidence is that if there's lived experience that people can see, visible and contagious recovery along the recovery journey, then people are more likely to be successful in their treatment journey. So that's something we really embrace. Also, obviously, because there's some stigma attached to substance misuse in many communities. And sometimes it can be hard to get back into employment again if people are accessing treatment, looking to get back into the career they had before. There can be barriers then. So we can offer. I think 11 people have come through a volunteer program now in the last 2 years and have accessed paid employment with us. So it offers different possibilities, because if a service like us can't offer employment, we're not really positively socially modelling what the possibilities are for people, and the possibilities of recovery as well. So so the levels of people coming through the service have increased markedly, especially over the last 8 months, as I say. In a service like ours, substance misuse services, I think, generally, having worked all over the country in this field for the last 16 years, have been ravaged by cuts, sadly. Just to give you a bit of an idea, when I first started out, I had a caseload working in the community of about 15 to 20 people. The last time I held a caseload, wasn't on the island, but I had 93 people, and that's the difference. But we have had a little injection of funding through over the past few months, which has been very much welcome, not to the levels that we would have had previously, but we've been able to add some other roles to our service now, because I think when we took over because it being a specialist service, we sort of maybe working in a silo a little bit, and maybe not very particularly well with some of our partner agencies, but we've really worked hard on that over the past 2 years. And I think we've got 2 roles funded now in the community from the local authority, from working with Jamie Brenchley, who's been a brilliant partner for us. So we've got a mental health nurse that works with our street homeless population. We can do mental health assessments there and then, and fast track people into treatment. That's been around now for a couple of months. We've got another housing navigator role under our umbrella as well, so people can go out. So a gentleman called Mark Langford can go out to sleep sites, plug people into treatment. If people drop out of treatment with us, they've always got support and can come straight back in rapidly. And we've got much more of a presence in the community now than we did then. We have got a mobile clinic van that we bought the island as well, so that we travel out to 2 people if they can't come into the service, and increase accessibility. COVID actually, despite us having a lot more referrals, has enabled us to bring some elements of the service forward quite quickly in terms of our digital interventions. At the beginning, when we were sort of holding back on a lot of face-to-face interventions with people, we started digital groups, more telephone contacts. And with that, our actual number of contacts with service users doubled. The group numbers at the beginning were much lower, but now they're getting back to old levels again. If people were struggling to access because they didn't have a phone, our virtual groups, or we provided mobile phones to people with a SIM card that were particularly vulnerable in the community, and even we got some funding through some donations through EE actually. So people can have a tablet and actually access that way as well. So even people in a sleep site that didn't find it particularly easy to engage with us, it just made it as easy as possible. So I don't think the service has ever been more accessible than it is now, and a testimony to that is the number of referrals we're getting through every month. Due to Dame Carol Black funding, I think the alcohol liaison nurse role in the hospital had been disappeared for about 11 years before, and other places I've worked, for example Southampton, Berkshire, Surrey, the alcohol liaison nurse role is integral to continuity of care between the hospital and a community service like ours, but that was missing. So managed to get the funding through to reinstate that, working closely with the Isle of Wight Trust, who funded it for the first 3 months, and now we've got external funding to take that through to next April, which is really good. Not long enough, but it's a step in the right direction, and we're already reaping the benefits from that in terms of our communication, the advice and information we can give at the hospital as well. Like I mentioned before, if people are, at a stage of recovery, if someone's a dependent drinker or an opiate user, that can be a 24-hour job. And when people start to successfully make changes in their lifestyle and the levels of substance misuse reduce, occupation is absolutely huge. And we really put an emphasis on that through our volunteer program to give people the structure back again to fill in those times. Because if you sit down and just think, I'm going to watch the telly for all that time that's left, it's the triggers are there for relapse or moving backwards in recovery. So that's why we're doing the things like walking groups, things like basic life skills like cookery, music, art, sport, gym, and really ploughing as much as we can into those things. We're working with the mental health hub as well, with Krista, who's working at the moment to actually expand on positive peer groups, so people can maybe move away from some of the negative influences they might have had before to more positive relationships and people that are at a stage of recovery in their mental health or substance misuse. That can be, again, it's infectious being in those like positive communities. So we've put a lot of emphasis in that into that, especially over the last couple of months. And last Monday we've got a completely new timetable set aside for those things like geocaching, orienteering, and those other bits as well, to get people out and about into the fresh air and promote healthier lifestyles. We're very fortunate. We've got an incredible team with incredible knowledge base, incredible levels of empathy, really care about the people that access our services. People come in and stay on the whole. Our retention of our staff is really high, which is so important for getting your core, building the experience and building that really positive atmosphere that people would want to come into as well. So that's been a real positive for us. Yeah, I guess that's kind of a whistle stop tour of what's been going on, but especially since sort of February, March this year, things have really accelerated for us. So yeah, lots going on.
Thanks, Gary. That's really, really interesting. Wow, yes, definitely lots going on and lots of improvements. Certainly, it's really good to hear about all the accessibility things and all of the additional options you're offering people. It sounds really comprehensive at the moment. We've got a question and answer session going on the side of the screen here. I know you are imminently going to be getting a ferry, as we can see, with you sat in your car. I'll just check with Andrew. Have we had any questions come through, Andrew? I can't see any, but don't know whether there's any new ones there.
No, not any new ones for Gary, no. But happy, okay. If we have any, Gary, if you're happy for me to take them and I can send them through to you and get your response at a later date.
Yeah, definitely. That's absolutely fine. Sorry, I can't stay for longer, but obviously there being I do live on the mainland. I'd love coming over to the island every day, but during the holidays, obviously it's a bit of a challenge in terms of booking ferries. Hence this situation. So sorry about that. One thing I did forget to mention was the links we've got with mental health services now. I know it's been a challenging time across the board, really, but because we have mental health professionals within our team, we've really developed really close links, and things are getting better and better with that all the time for people that have got mental health issues and substance misuse issues. You know, I think the relationship we've got at a very challenging time is probably the best I've seen, actually, anywhere I've worked in the country. So that we're really going in the right direction with that too, I think.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Gary. If there's no questions from anybody who's dialed in from members of the public, just quickly, is there anything from any of the partners who are on the call?
Hi, Amanda. It's Sarah Jackson.
Thanks, Sarah.
Can I just say that the last comments you made then, Gary, are really great to hear, the developments with the connection between your service and mental health services, because quite so often the two go hand in hand. To make sure that connection is there and the working relationship is strong and building is great to hear and really reassuring for the community. So thank you for all your hard work.
Absolutely. Thanks, Sarah. Anybody else from our partners? Lovely. Thank you so much for dialing in today, Gary. It was a really, really useful update. And if we have any further queries come in, then we will pass them on to you, and then we can publish our responses. But have a safe journey. Thank you for dialing in.
I have got a PowerPoint presentation as well that I can send across to you guys if you want to add that, which says a lot of the stuff that I've said. But anyway, thank you, everybody. Thanks for listening.
That's great. Thanks, Gary.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Right, that's great. Thank you for Gary for dialing in today. So the next item on our agenda is an update on one of our CSP priorities, which is the domestic violence and abuse. We're going to have a presentation from the Domestic Abuse Project Officer and the Isle of Wight Commission support service for domestic abuse and sexual violence, You First and the Hampton Trust. So thank you for Teresa, Tracy Jackson and Tracy Kent for dialing in today. Are you going first, Teresa?
I am, yes.
Brilliant. Over to you. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. I'm just going to get my slides up to show you to run through this presentation. Okay, so my name's Teresa Brimble-Brennan and I am the Domestic Abuse Project Officer for the Isle of Wight Council. I'm going to be doing this presentation today with Tracy Jackson from You First and also Tracy Kent from the Hampton Trust. Okay, so we're going to be talking today about domestic abuse. Just to give you some stats around domestic abuse, 1 in 4 women will experience domestic abuse in their lifetime. This stat has been the same for over 20 years, and the average time it takes a person to disclose this is generally 2 to 3 years. We also know that 1 in 5 people with a disability will live with it longer than someone who doesn't have a disability as before they disclose it. The other statistic is 1 in 6 men will experience domestic abuse, and it can take them up to 35 times of experiencing that domestic abuse before they'll disclose that. And for children, 1 in 7 children will grow up in a household with domestic abuse in their childhood. They are very much the hidden victims, and the new domestic abuse bill has recognised children as victims in their own right and recognises the lifelong harm that is present for them as well. Okay, so what is a Domestic Abuse Forum? Well, the Domestic Abuse Forum provides effective leadership in areas of domestic abuse to ensure that shared strategic objectives and partnership promoting multi-agency working, looking at decision making, information sharing and data collection. The aims of the DAF are to contribute to prevention and a reduction of domestic abuse. We want to increase confidence in people being able to report it and promote the local services that we have on the islands. It's used to strengthen the protection of adults and children who are impacted by domestic abuse, and it serves as a hub for best practice and evidence-based interventions. So looking at our priorities, our first priority is about prevention. And that's looking at our campaigns and ensuring that they promote key messages that emphasise healthy relationships and the fact that domestic abuse will not be tolerated. We want people to be free from abuse and a fear of no violence, and that's a basic right of everybody. Sexual assault may also accompany domestic abuse, but it's important that those who experience it are never to blame. Help is available from a wide range of services on the island, and all staff are trained to an appropriate level for their role. In terms of pathways, all barriers are identified and removed, and a clear pathway is available for anyone that needs it. So priority 2 of the DAF looks at services. And this is to ensure that the Joint Strategic Needs Assessment and Community Safety Assessment explicitly address the incidence and prevalence of domestic abuse, ensuring this informs future commissioning. Services and campaigns deliver projects to reduce repeat victims, and professionals feel confident to signpost and support perpetrators where appropriate. DAF Priority 3 focuses on the local need. This enables us to understand what the local need is and ensure that campaigns are targeted to address current trends and emerging needs. The Capacity Building Fund review plays a big part in shaping our future response. It will be a journey of discovery and a destination of success. I'm just going to run through some of our key campaigns now, and as you can see on this one was about Elder Abuse Day, which happened in June 2020. This campaign used targeted design in the posters to represent our elderly community and also to increase the understanding of the different types of abuse, including family abuse and abuse from carers. In October 2020, we looked at the impact on children of domestic abuse. Now, this was a clear message from these campaigns that children are always impacted. We provided a newsletter for schools and early years providers, and the referral pathway was distributed so that people knew what to do if domestic abuse was disclosed. And there was free training available to all school staff, available learning via the Learning Hub. Our next campaign that we did was the 16 Days of Action campaign. This ran from the 25th of November to the 10th of December. It contained unique social media posts and stories and had interactive stories across the 16 days, which focused on different aspects of domestic abuse and where people could seek help. We had a virtual reach of 26,563 for this particular campaign, which was really positive, and we had local newspaper coverage as well. This campaign was about sexual violence. And for this one, we had standard social media messages, which were shared across all of our partnership platforms. There were social media stories and press releases, and we created 3 videos as part of this campaign to advise people on what is sexual violence, what happens when the police are involved, and what happens if you request support from the ISVA team. We also promoted and recorded an ISVA information video introducing people to the ISVA team and what their service provided. There was also a Vectis interview and local newspaper coverage as part of this sexual violence campaign. Our most recent campaign was the Young Persons campaign. In this campaign, we had 2 weeks of social media between the 5th and the 16th of July. Our reach for this campaign was a staggering 62,823 across Facebook and Instagram. There were different elements of the campaign which focused on healthy relationships, coercive control, consent, and online safety. Coercive control had a reach of 23,232 and promoted a lot of discussion, likes and shares and conversations in the local community. There was a lot of support from people for each other. The interactive questions provided an opportunity to engage, inform and signpost with local newspaper coverage as well. So who are our local domestic abuse services? I'm not going to talk to you about You First and Hampton Trust because they'll be following on after myself and will explain themselves about what they do. But I can tell you we also have White Dash on the island. Now White Dash provide a freedom programme. They run domestic abuse recovery toolkits, ACEs. They have a WOW centre where they have groups that drop in. They provide one-to-one support and also play therapy for children. As well as White Dash, we have Bernardo's as well. Bernardo's have the Who's in Charge programme, which is about adolescent parent violence. This service is always also provided by the Yacht Service staff who provide it to their parents that they are currently supporting. There is the Frankie service, which provides counselling for children and young people who have been victims of sexual abuse, sexual exploitation and FGM. There is also the Trust Talk To service, which is a counselling service for children and young people who have experienced sexual abuse or violence. And they also support parents who may be experiencing parental conflict as well under their RPC agenda. And lastly, we have Break the Cycle. Break the Cycle run free Mind the Gap module courses for men and women who have suffered abuse working on the internal aspects of recovery. They also have a cyberbullying course for young people. Okay, that's everything from me. I'd now like to introduce Tracy Jackson from You First, who is going to talk about their services. Thank you.
Good evening.
Oh, sorry, Tracy, just before you come in, sorry, it's Andrew here. We just have an error message on the presentation screen. Sorry there, Teresa, the last few slides didn't cycle through, but I didn't want to break your flow. Teresa, could you excuse me, just unshare your screen and then reshare again, and let's see if that sort of reboots it almost. What I might do is just sort of start afresh and put me up on screen and then come back to you.
Okay.
And just before we go to Tracy.
Would you like me to share it now, Andrew?
Bear with me 2 seconds. I'm just going to
Andrew, if it's helpful, Sarah Jackson speaks. It was cycling through for me fine.
oh, well,
so that's helpful.
Oh, okay, that's good to hear.
Comment in terms of other people.
Oh, okay. Well, hopefully then that is fine. Okay. Well, what we do then, Teresa, if you want to, yeah, reshare that, bring it up to ready for Tracy's, then we should be fine with that. Thanks. Excellent. I see Helen's mentioned that it's okay for her as well. Thanks, Helen.
Doesn't seem to want to come through.
No. Is that showing on your side, Teresa?
It is, yeah, it's showing on my side now.
Ah, okay. Let's just try this, Joe. We have a different screen to everyone else because we manage the sort of the meeting and push things live, and unfortunately we can't see the presentation at the minute. So if you bear with us.
Andrew, again, if it's helpful, it's Sarah. It's not up for me this time round.
Brilliant. Okie doke. What
I'll stop sharing and share again. Shall I try?
Yeah, if you stop sharing, Teresa, I'll also try and bring it up on my side as well. Sorry everyone, if you don't mind just bearing with us. Okie doke, right.
We've got it now.
I was going to say I can see it now.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, so let's do that. And we're going to go to Tracy Jackson. Okay.
Lovely, thank you.
2 seconds, Tracy. There you are.
Brilliant. So I'm Tracy Jackson. I'm the team manager from You First. I support the support workers who support victims in the community and at refuge for domestic abuse. I'm going to tell you about what we do, how we help and who we help, and future projects and ways to refer into You First. Thank you, Teresa. So we run the Women's Refuge. We have a refuge whose capacity is 6 adults plus their children, and we provide the support in refuge for anything from emotional support for domestic abuse to housing to anything legal that the clients might need, to collecting donations. Recently, we've just done that for a lady who's due to have a baby, and we've collected some baby equipment for her. The domestic abuse advocates also do outreach support, so they work with clients in the community. Whoops, you've gone backwards, Teresa.
Sorry.
To support them in a similar way to the refuge clients, with emotional support, with domestic abuse education, anything to do with legal, anything to do with child contact. Basically, we're there to advocate for the clients and to walk on their journey with them and to support them. We have a lady who goes out to do target hardening, which is a very strange phrase. It just means making people's houses safer. So she visits them in the home, she does some safety planning with them, and she can give out things like window alarms, door jammers, personal alarms, and she gives them advice on keeping safe. We have a health-based IDVA who can work in the hospital and also in the community. We have an IDVA service, sorry, for the more high risk cases, so that they are a little bit more highly trained to work with those clients whose risk is more severe. We have 2 young people's workers who work in schools or with the children in their homes or gardens to make sure that they're supported if they've been subjected to domestic abuse or witnessed domestic abuse. We have a counselling service, we run recovery groups, and we run a Dragonfly project, which is where members of the community who are interested can become a champion so that they know how to talk to people who disclose about domestic abuse and how to signpost. And if anybody's interested in joining the Dragonfly project, if you go onto Eventbrite and search for Dragonfly Domestic Abuse Champion, that will bring up all the dates that are available for the Dragonfly project. Thank you, Teresa. So we're currently supporting 351 clients. That's men, women and children on the island. And in this quarter, we've had more referrals than we have ever had before. Most are for outreach. The numbers on our recovery groups have increased and the number of children that we've supported have increased. Our referrals come from a wide variety of places. Mostly they're from the police. Followed by self-referrals where people have seen the service advertised or they've been recommended from other services. And most of the referrals are for females, although we do support males and we do support children. Next slide, please. What else do we do? We've been running after-school clubs at Refuge with links from Home Start. So a Home Start volunteer comes in to help with those activities. Every month we run craft activities at Refuge for the children. And Osborne House have been really, really kind and have done weekly activities with the children and their mums so that they can be out and about in Osborne House and learning about the history of Osborne. We train professionals and we've recently teamed up with Mental Health and Inclusion to complete some training for the Safeguarded Children's Partnership. We've done training awareness with the police and job shadowing with the police. Our most recent initiative is with the DVA cars, where we're working with the police and allowing one of our domestic abuse advocates to go out with the police on calls that are to do with domestic abuse. So there's somebody there instantly to give safety advice, to give that emotional support and to signpost a victim into the service. We've attended a range of multi-agency meetings. We attended the PSHE training event and we've delivered talks and sessions in schools with support available for staff and students should they need it. Next slide, please, Teresa. Come to a bit of a full stop. The next slide is about future projects. Do you have that one, Teresa? Okay, I'll talk to you about the future projects. We're hoping
it has come up for us. I don't know whether you can actually see it. So yeah, it is there now.
I'll keep going. We're hoping to develop our links with inclusion and to have a drop-in service with inclusion and links to the new mental health peer-to-peer support team. We're hoping to work with Cafe 147 in Ryde so that we can have a drop-in session for the young people and to work with Aspire so that the children from Refuge can go and use their play facility down there. We're going to be running the ACEs programme for children and young people in schools and face-to-face in the evenings. We're hoping to raise awareness at events such as Walk the White, the Isle of Wight Festival and Jack Up the Summer. And we're continuing with training for professionals on CCB, stalking and the DASH risk assessment. We're looking for other children and young persons projects to link with in other areas of the island, not just Ryde, so that we can cover the whole island if possible. Next slide, Teresa. If anybody needs to refer anybody to You First, the referral forms can be obtained from our single point of contact on the number that's there, or via our website, which is via our email address, sorry, which is youtrust@theutrust.org.uk. We've contacted a range of professionals and updated all our literature and our referrals. A referral form, and professionals can refer, or people can refer themselves over the phone on that single point of contact number. The details are again on that slide, and I'd just like to thank you for listening to the presentation and to hand over to Tracy Kent, who works for Hampton Trust.
Thanks. Can we just pause there a minute? Thank you, Tracy, for that. That was really interesting. Andrew, are we still having a problem with the slides? I can see them, but I see that some of the people dialing on the public side can't.
Yes, unfortunately we do. There's nothing we can do our end without wanting to. We'd have to end and close the event and come back in, because it's just coming up really with an error message that we can only just dismiss. It's not it's not for want of us doing something wrong or incorrect. So we'll keep trying to push it through, but you can hear the speakers and things like that. So Tracy, if you can keep cycling through the slides, and hopefully it might pop back up at some point soon.
But we'll be able to publish the slides afterwards, perhaps on our website, and send them to people if they want to see them.
Yes, certainly. Yeah, people could pop pop their email in the chat if they wanted a copy of the slides. Yeah, certainly.
Lovely. Thanks, Andrew. Apologies.
It's okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Tracy Kent. I work for the Hampton Trust. So I'm here this evening to talk about the services that we've got running on the Isle of Wight. But within that, I wanted to give you a bit of an overview of what we do at the Hampton Trust, because in some areas it's not a very well-known service, and for other areas we are more known. But just to introduce myself, I've been with the Hampton Trust for 11 years now. I've worked in pretty much all the services that we offer, and prior to that I worked with ex-offenders on the Isle of Wight, and did that for quite a long time, sort of trying to help offenders who are coming out of prison, or those that demonstrate offending behaviour to get into employment, housing, etc. But anyway, if you'd like to move along, please, Teresa. So it looks like a lot, and I'm not going to go through them all. It's just to give you an idea of the services that we do have. The ones relevant to the Isle of Wight is ADAPT, which is our accredited domestic abuse perpetrator training, and CARA, which is there, and I'll explain that in a moment, and the ISFA service. We've been running for 25 years, as it says down there. We're actually celebrating our 25th anniversary this year. We started as a very small charity working with sex offenders and young people displaying sort of difficult behaviours, which we then moved into domestic abuse working with mandated perpetrators coming through the criminal justice system, which we then moved to working with community individuals, to which we are still doing to this day. So ADAPT is our longer term programme. We have different interventions, which I'll explain as we go along. But it's our main sort of flagship perpetrator work that we do. I do use very perpy language. I say perpetrator and I say victim, just to make it clear who I'm talking about. But basically, we would never use that with our service users. So Headway is another service that we stabilise individuals before they can come through to our behavioural change programmes. But moving on to CARA, which is our cautioning and relationship abuse intervention, is an out-of-court disposal, which we work with the police in Hampshire, the Isle of Wight and Southampton to offer an awareness raising process to individuals who have committed domestic abuse offences at a standard medium severity, and we work with them to sort of identify their risks, understand what domestic abuse is, and understand the impact of their behaviour. We hope to get them into other services down the line, or even into our perpetrator longer term programmes, but it's only referred into by the police, and we're in 8 different force areas across the UK now. Links to our young persons work, you may have heard of it before, because we did run links on the Isle of Wight for some time, and we also work with priority perpetrators, high harm, perpetrators that are moving from relationship to relationship, and try and tackle their behaviour and work with them to engage them into our services. The other service that is relevant to the Isle of Wight is the ISFA service, which is the Independent Sexual Violence Advisor, which Teresa alluded to earlier, and I'll explain about that as we go along this PowerPoint. We also oversee Drive in Dorset, which is again a national initiative to tackle high harm, high risk perpetrators of domestic abuse. Until it's the end of the day, I can't speak. We also do some VRU work in Southampton with violent offenders, referred to as via probation, to do some stabilisation work and divert them away from offending behaviour. If you could move on, please, Teresa. So just put the slide on really. If you can't see it, I will read it out. I'll sort of pull out the main parts of that. But basically 100% of victims of domestic abuse have at least one perpetrator. Nationally, 30 domestic homicide reviews are undertaken by Standing Together. 29 of these are male killers. 149 women in 2020 were killed by a male. 61% of those were killed by their partner. 8%, their partner or ex-partner, 8% killed by their son or stepsons. 41% of women who were killed within the first month of planning to leave or have left their relationship. So 70% of women were murdered within the first year of separation. 52% of perpetrators had previous histories of violence against victims or other women. 3 women die per week in the UK relating to domestic violence and abuse. And I put this up there because in all the years I've been working with domestic abuse, these stats don't change. They remain static, and we can put a sticky plaster on the problem, which is helping the victims, and quite rightly we should be helping the victims. As Tracy was alluding to in her presentation, we need those services, but we also need to tackle the root of the problem. We need to work with the perpetrators and hold them accountable for their behaviour, but we also have to do that safely. During the pandemic, during lockdown, we saw 5 women a week die in the UK from domestic abuse. The levels went up astoundingly, and we had a lot of calls from individuals that were really struggling with their behaviour during that whole lockdown period. If you could move on, please, Teresa. Basically, those stats as well demonstrate the tip of the iceberg, because what we know from domestic homicide reviews, and I attend quite a few over the years, and what we know that those individuals have actually never come into the sight of any services that work with either domestic abuse or frontline services. And so what's going on underneath that iceberg is it's 1 in 3 women and 1 in 6 men are affected by domestic abuse. But just to give you an understanding of how perpetrator interventions work, and they've been around for a long time, and not every area has got the luxury of having a domestic abuse programme in their area, which is really quite sad, but that's going to be hopefully changing. Now we have the Domestic Abuse Bill, which is now the Domestic Abuse Act, and we also have a perpetrator strategy, which will we hope will sort of gravitate more funding for perpetrator organisations to be able to do the work that is much needed. But basically, you've got early intervention, which is the CARA type workshops. They are tackling those that are coming into the attention of services. When we look at community domestic abuse programs, anybody from any risk level, or you can self-refer, they can be referred in from the police, they can be referred in from social services, and generally our main referrer is children's services, where they have some sort of plan to do with the children on an order, maybe that they encourage or they support the perpetrator to actually attend or engage with our services. And then we have our high harm initiative. So we do our own high harm work within the Hampton Trust with our single point of contact, which is provided by Aurora New Dawn. We're doing a pilot at the moment with the police to really look at those really high risk offenders and engage them into our programs. And these are some of the individuals we'd never normally see on a day-to-day basis. And so we are proactively disrupting their behaviour. But in terms of court mandated work, that's provided by probation, who will do building better relationship, which is mandated. So they are very much, they have to attend those programs, whereas ours are voluntary, and they may have their arm up against their back to some sort, and then once they come on our programs, they start to see the benefit themselves. No perpetrator program or organisation would be safe to run without an integrated victim service, and so we have an integrated safety service that will work with the partners or the ex-partners of any perpetrator being referred into the service, to really understand how a perpetrator changes and some of the things that are happening at home, especially if they still live with their partner. We need to get that side of the story from their partner. And we also need to make sure that they stay safe along the whole intervention. And also give them signposting, offer them choices. They need to understand what's happening on the programmes, to really sort of understand how their partner's behaviour is changing, because it can be quite a nerve-wracking time. If you can move along, please, Teresa. Very often we are missing opportunities to engage perpetrators, and I'm not going to talk through this slide because it is very detailed, but it's a significant proportion of perpetrators remain out of the criminal justice system. And what we know with the agencies that we engage with, specifically children's services, is that they don't talk to the perpetrator very often. They don't engage them because they're quite nervous about what to say, how to ask questions, how to actually engage with them. And we find that with many frontline services, that they have an ideal of what a perpetrator of domestic abuse is, and there's lots of myths and stereotypes out there. And part of what we hope to do, we are attempting to do at the Hampton Trust, is diminish some of those myths around perpetrators to make it more accessible. If you could move on, please, Teresa. When we recognise unconscious biases, which is basically if you've been brought up in a safe, happy home, it's going to be really hard to understand what it's like to live in a home with a perpetrator, but even harder for a service to understand how to actually deal with that perpetrator. If you can move on, sorry, again. And sort of be able to identify the signs that there is domestic abuse, but also how am I going to engage that perpetrator? So we've developed a training programme that is broken into three modules to actively encourage frontline services professionals to engage perpetrators safely and with confidence, to ensure that obviously the bigger picture, that all victims and families are kept safe, but be able to also work in collaboration with ourselves to be able to have some sort of consultation around cases that they may be struggling with. But we work to upskill them to be able to really engage perpetrators and engage them to understand what we do at the Hampton Trust and how they can enter into our services. If you could move on, please. So we work on a ethos. The underpinning sort of model of our programme is what's called the Duluth power and control model. And we work with individuals, I'm not going to go into great depth with you, but we work with individuals to recognise what a healthy relationship looks like. When we look at people's ACEs, when we look at our services ACEs, which is our adverse childhood experiences, what we recognise is a lot of individuals have come from homes where they may have witnessed domestic abuse themselves or even been at the receiving end of it. And that's not to say that they are determined to go on and be perpetrators themselves, but we know it has a definite impact on their behaviour. But it also, for some people that have grown up in that, they will go on and not be abusive. And so it is very much a choice of behaviour. But we work with individuals to get them to recognise what an equal relationship looks like, what a balanced, healthy relationship looks like. The flip side of this wheel, if you could move on please, Teresa, is the power and control wheel. And this depicts what domestic abuse is in all its entirety. There's, I guess, societal beliefs, societal views of domestic abuse is that of violence. And if you look at this wheel here, the outside of this wheel will say physical violence and sexual violence. But that doesn't have to be something that's really violent in the impact of punching someone in the face, for example. This could be something just really scary that's happened, but it has such an impact on the victim that it alters the dynamic in that relationship. So violence is a very small part of domestic abuse. Physical violence can be used in many different ways, to somebody making themselves look bigger, blocking somebody's exit from a building, intimidating somebody with the way they look at them. We class that as violence because they're using their physical self to make somebody feel inferior to them. And so once you've got that dynamic happening, then a perpetrator of domestic abuse will dip in and out of these behaviours. And the guys that we work with, and we work with women too, is a very different kind of way of working, because the dynamic is that of generally a lot we see is violent resistance. But when we work with males, what they recognise is where they are on this wheel, and their intention is to move to non-violent behaviours or non-controlling behaviours, but they have to go through a long-term behavioural change process to get that. If you could move on, please. To actually enable that to happen, we've got to really take away barriers preventing individuals coming to our services. And to do that, we have to really engage individuals and work. We use a lot of motivational interviewing to engage service users, to bring down their barriers, to be able to recognise and be accountable for their behaviour. So the process of behavioural change starts with building a relationship, but we do sort of mini modules with them. We do one-to-one sessions with them to really build the trust and open up the conversation. We've had a documentary recently where Ian Wright, it was called Home Truths on BBC One, and it was a fantastic documentary that really were individuals to understand what it was like for him to grow up in a home where there was domestic abuse, but also some of the behaviours that he recognises into his adulthood of violence and using violence himself on the football pitch maybe. But it's opened up a lot of doors, and through the back of that we've received a lot of self-referrals. But it just, again, it brought down some of those barriers, because there's, again, perpetrators will have the same societal views that domestic abuse is high-end violence, when actually it is a range of behaviours. If you could move on, please. So they'll come to an assessment. Anybody can refer, any service can refer. If you are a service and you're encouraging individuals to refer by signposting them, that's great. But if you are a social worker, we encourage the social worker to do that referral, because we need all the case notes to go with it and to understand what the bigger picture of that situation is. We offer one-to-one pre-group work, but we also offer one-to-one group work should those individuals not be able to attend in a group for reasons of language barriers or there may be some sort of disability that prevents them be able to hear or engage in that process. Can you move on, please, Teresa? Moving on to the independent, this is a really whistle-stop tour, but moving on to the independent sexual violence advisors, like Teresa was talking about, we've done a lot of work recently to sort of advertise the service, and because we are celebrating our 10th year, we set the service up on the Isle of Wight 10 years ago, and back then we had about probably 20 to 30 referrals a year. And now we're looking at over 100 referrals a year, which doesn't sound a lot, but in the scheme of things, the ISFA service is a long service, and we can support individuals for many years post reporting a sexual violence incident, assault to the police, or they come to us independently outside of the justice system. So, sexual violence advisors were brought into the community and into the justice system, and to work alongside the police. Following the retention rates for court cases was incredibly low, and what they found was that witnesses, those that the aggrieved parties that have reported rape, for example, would not see the whole process through because of the length of time it takes, and mental health is severely affected, and not only post an assault, but also having to wait for their court case to come along. It can be up to 2 years, even in normal times. In COVID times, we've seen cases taking up to 3 to 4 years. If you could move on, please. So ISFAs will provide impartial information. So they are the independent part of an ISFA is incredibly important because they're separate from any other services, and they're able to offer options to a victim or survivor, such as reporting to the police and explaining the whole process. We've had cases where we've actually set up where they don't have to go through the process of ringing 101. They can meet with a specially trained officer to really talk about what would be ahead of them, especially when it comes to dealing with reporting childhood abuse. We have lots of adults that come through our services that have been abused as a child, and the impact of talking about their whole experience can be re-traumatizing. So we have to really manage that, even from the very point of somebody disclosing that they an incident. We have to really manage that. If it goes wrong, it can affect our whole case. So we can set up things like going to the Sexual Assault Referral Centre, which is generally done via the police on the back of a report, which is in Cosham. It's the Treetop Centre. So if somebody is attacked and they are assaulted, they can go for go through a process of forensic evidence gathering, basically via doctors at the SARC, and they'll give them specialist support, and they also refer to the ISFA service. But also we want to deal with a lot of the issues they've got predominantly. So if they've got housing issues, they're not going to be able to focus on anything else happening for them in the aftermath of something really traumatic happening. If you could move on, please, Teresa. Like it says here, the benefit of the ISFA is to provide ongoing continuity, advocacy, and impartial advice. So we go to court where there is court cases. There's been a real lack of court hearings over the last few years, and even to that point, we can be lobbying the criminal justice system to actually raise awareness that things are not happening as they should during the criminal justice system processes, the court processes. We're very we act as advocates to be the voice of the victim, to be able to talk about stuff that they would not be able to do in that time of, like I said, trauma. But where there's a victim and survivor that's also a witness support, we work alongside other specialist organisations such as the witness service in the courts to make sure they get the best support as possible when they go through that process to avoid re-traumatisation, but also the impact of just going through that process, really. You can move on, please. And like it says here, sexual violence can have a severe psychological, emotional and physical impact. The support offered by NISFA is tailored to the identified needs of the victim and survivor. Accordingly, the support offered by NISFA will vary from case to case, as each victim survivor may require support from a range of different services. And so even though we have maybe over 100 referrals a year, we also are working with those that could be referred from the past year. And we're actually really fortunate on the Isle of Wight. We've now sort of grown our service and we have 2 adult ISFAs. We have one young person's ISFA that will work with children from the age of 6. And now that's quite a young age. We don't do any therapeutic work with them. It's more of overseeing their well-being, and we refer them to therapeutic services. But what we aim to do is help the families. We work with a lot of families, work with parents, sometimes work with grandparents. It could be individuals attached to the family or even employers to help them understand what this person's going through and how they are best to support. Move on, please. Yeah, so like it says here, to effectively facilitate the victim's access to other agency or support services, ISFAs have to have a thorough understanding of different roles. So we spend a lot of time meeting other agencies, going to other agencies to talk about what we do, but also we want to get out to the community as well. We want to spread the word in the community that if something like this happens to you, that you know, or you know of somebody that has experienced this, that there is specialist expert services out there that can support them during probably a really awful time in their life. And that about wraps that up. I'm sorry if I went on a bit too long there, but here, if you go to the Hampshire Trust website, it's got a whole range of our services and online referral processes that you can do and telephone numbers that you can access for the ISFA or the domestic abuse prevention programs. But yeah, if anybody's got any questions, please don't hold back.
Thank you, Tracy. Let's just have a look to see if we've got any questions come through on the Q&A. That was all really, really useful to hear about everything that's going on with regard to domestic abuse from both Teresa, Tracy and Tracy. Thank you very much for that today. I do apologise for those who have dialed in as attendees who can't view the presentations. We will get them put on our website, and please do email us and we can send you copies of those. I know it's a bit frustrating for Andrew and the team who are trying to get that working. Andrew, can you see have we had any new questions come in? I can't.
No new questions. No, not for Tracy. No.
Okay, so we've got to the end of our presentations there. So can I just open it up to the partners who are around the virtual table today to see if there are any queries or questions around those presentations that everybody has presented today.
Amanda, Sarah Jackson from Police.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi. I just wanted to reiterate what you said about the presentations and the work that both You First, the Hampton Trust, and those other services that Teresa outlined do in support of victims of domestic abuse and sexual offences, and of course the work with perpetrators. I think Tracy, you articulated it brilliantly about the need to work with perpetrators and how important that is, and as you say, hopefully more developments in relation to that going forward. So my thanks for all your work, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how the pilot around the domestic abuse joint patrols plays out for us over the coming months. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. There was some brilliant work there highlighted, and some brilliant reach as well of some of those campaigns which went out. And I know this is an area where we're doing further work as the local authority with regard to domestic abuse and that new Domestic Abuse Act, which was mentioned in the presentations. I am conscious of time. We have got to the end of the main part of the agenda today. What we did do when we advertised, obviously, the meeting in public, we do put it out for members of the public to come to us with questions which they can raise before the meeting. So we do have a few questions which did come in beforehand, which some of the key partners have seen and should have been able to prepare a little bit of a response. Andrew, do you want to take us through the questions, or do you want me to read them out?
Yep, I can do that, Matt. What I'll do, just in case we aren't still seeing slides, I'll pop them in the Q&A, just so that people can refer to them as well. So let me just copy and paste these from here.
Thank you.
So the first question was around what community safety partnership discussions or work takes place around racial abuse, and what support is available for victims. So I had a few comments back at things, and I've summarised that here, and then we'll go to any other partners if anybody wanted to contribute. So I suppose to summarise, we'll soon actually be introducing, and we have started the sort of theme of hate crime and community cohesion, sort of tension, as I mentioned earlier, into our multi-agency arrangement, our joint action group, as the CSP is conscious that these issues are much wider than the actual offence themselves. So they cover all areas of hate, not just those that are racially motivated. And victim support through the Victim Care Service I do offer support to victims of hate crime, including those racially motivated as well. And a number of our sort of partner organisations and youth providers also include education around hate crime within their provisions. But it does prove to be difficult tackling what might be deeply rooted behaviour or culture. And obviously through the prevent agenda as well, through Channel, we would aim to work with individuals, if they showed sort of intent to cause racially motivated harm based on an ideology, for example. So that was sort of a summary there. I don't know if we have any other partners here who would like to contribute to that.
Yeah, Andrew, Sarah from Police again.
Hi, Sarah. Yeah.
Hi, and just to add to that, we've done work with the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner in setting up with third parties supporting, third-party reporting centres, which enable someone to go in and report a hate crime where they would rather not talk to the police, and then the matter is referred to the police for investigation. Certainly our drive is to increase the confidence within communities and to report hate crimes so that we can understand the picture of what is happening and therefore identify any possible community tensions that might come about as a result of those hate crimes. So continually we're engaging with those communities to try and increase that confidence to report hate crimes, and hate crime victims are treated as priority victims in terms of the investigations that do come to us. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. I mean, it is something which is also picked up in the strategic assessment, where we look at that sort of hate crime data, but also any emerging issues which will perhaps come up through the JAG as well, and certainly concerns around any, I suppose, any external factors. So COVID might have had a bit of a factor in that, and then some of the other key things which were going on in sort of the media with regard to Black Lives Matter, and some of those other sort of campaigns which were going on as well, which might not appear in some of our strategic data, but is an emerging issue that we can then pick up on in our joint action meetings and the community safety partnership as well. Just to open it out before we move on to the next question, just to make sure those who have dialed in as attendees can see on the bar at the top of your Teams, you should have two little speech bubbles overlapping each other with a question mark in it. If you do want to ask a question, just click on that and that will open up the live event Q&As. So yeah, hopefully you should be able to see that. Do you want to move on to the second question, Andrew?
Yeah.
Brilliant.
So just posted that second question now. So that is, we've seen Donna Jones, the new Police and Crime Commissioner, in the news recently. How are you ensuring the island will benefit from the new Commissioner's plans or initiatives? So I actually personally work quite closely with the Police and Crime Commissioner's office. So she has a number of colleagues working alongside her, managing various different themes, like some of those that we've covered here today, some of the priorities, including the violence reduction unit work. So I work very closely with colleagues there, and actually Joanna has kindly dialed in today. She mentioned a comment earlier, so thank you, Joanna, for joining us. So for yeah, so we work with them on the violence reduction unit work, and I suppose the second part of the question, how we ensure we benefit, I think by engaging with the office regularly, we are opening ourselves up to the opportunities that are available, and I mentioned, for example, those two new opportunities coming up around the trauma-informed training and the education for Year 6, Year 7. That's just an example of a larger piece of work that's rolling out across Pan Hampshire, that by engaging with the office, we're ensuring we're benefiting from that. I've also got a comment from Nikki, who's representing the youth offending team today. Nikki is listening in, but unfortunately she can't speak. I think she was here earlier, threw her out, and she's back in. But Nikki mentioned to me earlier in the week when I ran this question past everyone, that from a youth offending team perspective, the Police and Crime Commissioner has traditionally worked in partnership with local agencies, so they ensure that any money provided to the island is backed by research and what works. So money that is spent is sort of spent efficiently and effectively, and the youth justice emphasis on early intervention and trauma-informed practice is quite prominent in the understanding that a majority of children who get into trouble sort of don't go on to do it again if they're involved in that practice. And I know the office directly support the youth crime prevention work that we deliver on the island, which really is crucial in preventing young people from entering that criminal justice system. We certainly don't want to be criminalising young people, but addressing those underlying issues. So that's again one of the ways that we benefit through that service. So those are the pre-submitted ones. Again, just go out to the floor if anybody else has anything to add.
If I may, Sarah Jackson from Police again.
Yeah, I'm sure, Sarah, you work with the office for it. Yeah,
absolutely, and certainly my experience of our new PCC, although probably could need to stop calling her the new PCC very shortly, is that she's really keen to listen to what worries local communities and hear what the concerns are, and that very much does include the Isle of Wight. So and that then links with how her office responds to what the needs are, and I would reiterate the funding for the youth crime prevention work has been crucial in diverting young people away from the criminal justice system, because no one wants to see a young person criminalised. So thank you.
Yeah, and just for me to add, obviously I know our leader Laura PC Wilcox was dialing into the call. Hopefully she's still on there. Obviously Donna came over and had quite a long conversation with us around community safety, along with Laura, myself, Andrew, and then I know obviously she visited the police afterwards, and sorry, our chief executive as well, John Metcalf. So you know, she was very engaged, very much wanted to hear our opinion. So you know, it is a good relationship that we have, and hopefully we'll be able to build on that as well, in order to be able to fully benefit from the new Police and Crime Commissioner, and the island's perspective of that. Thanks, Andrew.
Okay. Was there any other comments before we move on to the last question?
Oh, Laura, I think you're still here. That's great. Brilliant.
Oh,
Let's
yes.
move on to the last one, Andrew. Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, excellent. Okay. So the last question, I'll just paste it in the chat, in the Q&A bar. So the last question is, are you still enforcing any COVID regulations, and what will happen if there is another wave with lockdowns? So I think Amanda is going to come to you on this one initially.
Yeah, of course, no problem. From the Community Safety Partnership, it's not enforced by the Community Safety Partnership, but obviously the partners around the table do have some responsibility in that. So primarily it is the local authority and the police which did enforce the COVID restrictions. There are a few other agencies who might also be involved, so like Border Force with regard to international travel, and the Health and Safety Executive as well. So obviously the last year and a half we've had a number of restrictions which has been enforced by the local authority and the police, and worked very well in partnership to actually look at the safety of the island. We've also worked alongside Public Health England and the Director of Public Health and his team as well. Again, in partnership, we've had a number of boards. We have our Health Protection Board, and then we have our Outbreak Control Board, which are looking at all of those things. With regard to the enforcement and sort of regulation side of things, obviously we have seen a relaxation of restrictions. Having said that, although we're not specifically enforcing any law at the moment with regard to that, there are things that certainly businesses and individuals will still need to do. Certainly businesses still have to do risk assessments, and they still have to consider the spread of COVID in their businesses and how it can affect those businesses. What will happen if there's another wave with lockdowns? Obviously, we'll respond and work closely with our partners, and that includes the government departments who will advise us of what their expectations are of us and any new legislation that they're going to bring in. So with COVID, we saw a number of very specific legislative powers given to both us and the police. They have come to an end, most of those, but there's nothing to say that they couldn't necessarily be brought back in again, and then we would respond to that. So I think, you know, at the moment we are only responding to certain COVID restrictions which are still in place, which sort of primarily fall perhaps more to the police around the self-isolation, but certainly from a local authority point of view, we're still supporting businesses and individuals to keep themselves safe. So you will see a number of media messaging going out from the local authority, and we still have the Keep the Island Safe website if people want to go on there and get any further information. Sarah, you probably have something to add to that as well.
Yeah, I suppose just to outline what our approach has been throughout, and that's been around, we've called it the 4 E's. So it's if we feel that there was a breach, we would engage with that person, explain the context of the breach, and encourage them to stop doing what they were doing, only moving to enforcement where absolutely necessary. And certainly that was our approach throughout, and we kind of adjusted it as we went. Because in the very early days, it was new for everybody, and everybody trying to adjust to what they could and couldn't do. As time went by, we perhaps moved through some of those first 3 E's quicker, and to enforcement where there were absolutely clear and blatant breaches of the regulations and the legislation. So I hope we got the balance right in terms of trying to educate, encourage people to do the right thing. And I have to say a huge thank you to the community on the Isle of Wight, because largely and the vast majority of people did do that, did comply with the regulations, and that's what helped us in some of those more challenging times. As you say, we don't know what the future holds at the moment. We're in a different space now, and we'll see how things go, and we will respond to whatever the need is to keep the community safe and prevent the spread of the disease wherever we can. So thank you for the support.
Amanda, may I just come in there as well?
Of course,
Helen,
yeah.
Helen here from
Hi, Helen.
Public Health. Hi, thank you. And just to add to what both of you have just said, it's been a real partnership approach, the COVID response, and that's been really important. And now, although the restrictions have been lifted in the main, the risk hasn't gone away, as we all know. So although the enforcement might have changed in how that works, we're very much promoting the messaging around staying safe in the current context, and we'll continue to do that in line with the local picture on the island and in line with national guidance as well.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Helen. Right, I can see on there, Andrew, that we haven't got any new questions, and we are getting to the end of our time now. So I just wondered, this is a question for the partners around the table, whether there's any other business that you wanted to raise at the meeting today.
Not from me, thank you very much.
Thank you. So we've
Not
got...
from me, please, thank you.
Lovely. So I think really just we are just getting to closure. So I just wanted to say thank you to all of the partners who dialed in today and all of those who were presenting, including Gary, who has now left to go on his journey. It was a really, really enlightening update for what those key services are delivering on the island and our communities. So thank you very much for bringing that today. Thank you very much for everybody who dialed in as attendees. I will apologise again that we couldn't manage to get those presentations to come up on the live link for some reason. Some of us could see it, but not everybody. So I do apologise for that. But as I said, we can get those available to you. So if you want to email in to get copies of those, please do. And we can work out getting those actually on our website as well. So people can view them on the website and we can post the link to that as well. Thank you so much, everybody, then. And we will have our next meeting. I can't remember the date of the next meeting, Andrew. If you've got it there. Probably put you on the spot.
No, it's okay. We have our next CSP meeting, not a public one, but in September. But yes, we'll look to do one of these annually, sort of same time, but we again might change times, dates to see what's more suitable, and hopefully one in person then as well. So.
Yes, yeah, hopefully normally we have those at the Riverside Centre, but obviously we can look at the location of those as well. So yes, just a last minute thank you ever so much to everybody for dialing in today. Please do, if you have any further questions, please do email and we can get answers out for those. But I hope you all found it very interesting today. Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.